In today's episode of the Pathmonk Presents podcast, I have a very interesting guest. I'm with Jeroen Corthout, and he is the co-founder of Salesflare. And if you are somehow, like everybody, sick and tired of putting data into your CRM, then this might be an interesting conversation for you guys today. I know we have a lot of sales and growth marketers listening in. So let's see what Salesforce is doing and learn a little bit about the growth strategy as well. So Jeroen, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here.
Very cool. So maybe give us an overview. What is Salesflare all about?
Salesflare is a CRM. There's a lot of those out there. I think a bit over 650 or so. At least if you go on g2.com, that's how many you'll find. We focused on small and medium-sized businesses who sell B2B with a sales CRM. And where we make the difference is that most CRMs, when you have some experience with them, you'll probably know, is that it's very hard to keep them up to date. And if you don't, then they quickly become useless because like a CRM that doesn't contain all the data that you're expecting to have in there, it's just not, you cannot do much with it. Now, the issue is that most systems come with the expectation that you're going to fill them out diligently. Like every single thing you do, you're going to put in the CRM. Every little piece of data that you find, you're going to copy it in there. And that's only when it works. And we just didn't think that's realistic. So we created a CRM that actually bases itself on all that data that already exists in lots of different places, whether it's your emails and email signatures or email tracking or email headers or the traffic between people, the connections, the meetings, the stuff in your phone, stuff in social media and company databases, web tracking. We just automatically pull that all together, organize it for you, make sure that you don't have to do that. A computer can do that way better than any human anyway. And then make sure that you can use that data to follow up your customers better with all sorts of automation and overviews and all this kind of stuff.
Very cool. Definitely gives an overview of what the tool is about. Could you maybe tell us a little bit? You mentioned already small, medium businesses are using it. Are you in particular verticals that this is working really well? Is that particular size of sales teams where it's working really well? Maybe can you give us an insight?
The size of the sales teams ranges really from one person to, I think our biggest customer is now 40, 50 or something. Mm-hmm. It's we've adapted over the years to larger ones as well. The really large ones in those type of organizations, they look for enterprise CRMs, which can be fully adapted to whatever the company needs. Then you end up with something like Salesforce or so. Mm-hmm. But until there, our system is really useful for the sales aspect of a company and a part of the marketing. I mean, the boundaries there are not super well defined. So our software is currently mostly used by agencies on the one hand, agencies mm-hmm. and consultancies actually. There's a lot of digital marketing agencies using our software, consultancies of all types, software development companies. And then on the other hand, a lot of tech companies, of which a large part are SaaS companies, but also some telcos, etc., and other types of tech data companies.
And would they use it sort of in combination with another CRM where they don't have to fill it out, or is that like a standalone solution for them? This is their CRM.
It's the standalone solution. Yeah. Okay. Initially, we thought about Salesflare as a sales platform. Because we thought we were going to build something for enterprises. We thought like these enterprises, they have a support system, they have a marketing system, and then they have the salespeople somehow need to work in the central thing, the CRM. And we thought that didn't make a lot of sense. But we found out that these enterprises actually don't want to change that. They don't want to get Salesflare. They want to fix Salesforce, to say it simply. So we redirected our attention on small and medium-sized businesses. Also because we saw that there's way more interest in small and medium-sized businesses in something that actually works and something that is easy to use and works for the end user and it's called all this kind of stuff, then in enterprises, they just don't care that much.
Yep. Makes a whole lot of sense. Once it's in place, nobody wants to touch it. Very good. Okay, cool. That is very insightful. I would be curious though, now that you directed your attention on that small to medium-sized businesses, right? What would be sort of the channels that you win those guys through? What is sort of the client acquisition path that you've been carving out?
Most of our acquisition is inbound, almost all of it actually. The largest part of it is word of mouth. It's basically people telling other people what they use. And that happens a lot in CRM. You've probably seen this kind of threads on social media, first of all, where somebody says, what CRM should I pick? And then everybody shares what they have. Or it's just between each other and it's less visible like that. Then secondly, we have a lot of people coming through, let's say Google. So there's a lot of searching going on for what's the best CRM. There's stuff on review sites where we're well reviewed, like for instance on g2.com, we're one of the top CRMs, especially when it comes to ease of use. And I think we're the number one easiest to set up CRM. So this kind of stuff helps. And then there's also all kinds of other sites. We're also number one on Product Hunt. And there's lots of blog listings, of all types where people say this is the best and this is the best. And then third, we get quite some leads also through content marketing. Some of our content marketing is more directed towards functionality that we provide, sort of helping people to solve a certain issue and then introducing the software. And that also gets us quite some leads.
Interesting. You brought up Product Hunt there. A lot of the listeners are probably curious on how to leverage Product Hunt. Do you have like one or two insights from your Product Hunt launch and success that you still take away? Something that you felt you guys did really well?
We have a whole article on that. If you type Product Hunt
Perfect.
launch Salesflare, it's very long and entertaining as well. But a few simple things. It's obviously good to have an eye-catching little picture, a decent tagline that says what it is. You need to catch people's attention, and you need to keep in mind that the audience of Product Hunt is mostly other people with startups or product enthusiasts in general. So you need to appeal to them there. Another key thing is sort of the intro text that you write, but that's already, then they've already clicked through and everything. And the graphics you have on top, maybe videos. Those are things to spend some time on. From there, it's mostly about getting on page one first. But if you don't hit page one, then you have very little chance, of course, to get to the top. You'll need some people to get you there. If you look at Product Hunt, you might find that products that get to the top 5 don't just get there by themselves. It doesn't magically happen. So you need to ask some friends to upfill vote you. Maybe your community or your customers can do some work. And then from there, it's very important to create some hype, some interactivity, let's say. And in the long run, at some point there was a thing called Product Hunt Ask, and that also got us quite some leads. Because people would ask, what's the best CRM for this or go, and then they could suggest stuff. And these things tended to do well in Google, but I think that's gone now.
I see. Super interesting. Maybe on the notion of acquisition and growth, what role do you attribute to the website?
Well, the website is the main place where people go to find out about the software. It's sort of like, I think nowadays there's so much choice out there that people always go in steps. First, they will look for lists for some, like, what could I look at? Then they go look at websites to sort of narrow down a little and to see like, what am I going to trial? And then they do trials where at first they don't do anything. They just look at the screens a little. And they're like, yeah, I don't know. This seems like something I could try to use. And then people try to use, well, hopefully a few things, usually probably one thing, like actually try, because that's probably the most important part in the process is actually trying what you're planning on using. And then from there, people decide where they're going to pay. So there's a lot of steps, and the website has an essential role in the early stages where they have found out about you, but want to make sure that you might be the right fits. So they might go try you.
Gotcha. Very good. Explaining quite well there the journey that they're going through. Anything from your founder's perspective, where do you still see room for improvement on the page, or where do you see the page developing towards to?
I think for us it's time definitely to make a new website altogether. We always make small improvements. Like right now, my co-founders, for instance, changing the top image we have on the site. There's like a Salesflare shown in a computer and a phone, and the computer and phone start to become a bit outdated. So that might give some people the wrong impression. So we're updating that. This is kind of small things that we do on a continuous basis. We have in our processes somewhere it's called growth improvements. And it's not necessarily only on the website. It can also be changes on the blog, might be changes in the onboarding somewhere, or all kinds of different places. We use Google Optimize for a lot of these things. So we can actually see what has a positive effect and what doesn't. But the time is now almost right for us to make a new website. I think we need to completely rethink it. Sometimes that needs to happen as well.
Super interesting. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your journey a little bit. We talked about sales, where we talk a little bit about how you're thinking about growth. I would be curious, with all the content that is out there, where do you go for educating yourself, and maybe what is your sort of mechanisms of filtering which content to completely ignore?
I tend to go for podcasts, actually. I find that people in podcasts are more likely to have a real conversation about things than on blog posts. Another thing is that a lot of blog posts are not written by the people actually doing stuff. They're written by copywriters that basically do their research based on other blog posts. So they read what other copywriters wrote and they just rehash that. So it's usually not very educative. It's better to actually listen to the experts, and those don't have a lot of time and they're not spending it on writing blog posts in many cases. So then a podcast is often better. I do that, and I also read a lot of books, not necessarily very specific to what I do, but a bit all over the place, because I find that inspiration can come from many places. It doesn't necessarily need to be a B2B SaaS inspiration or something. Yeah. And then maybe another thing is discussions in communities. They used to be better in the past, though, like Facebook groups, for instance, stuff on Reddit. Sometimes there's some good stuff in there, but I feel that lately the quality has been going down a little. So
interesting. Since we slowly come into an end of the interview, I would love to jump into our rapid fire questions. Are you ready for those?
I'm ready.
What's the last book that you read, actually?
Good question. I'm currently reading Save the Cat Writes a Novel. That's one of these cases. Like I don't know whether you know the book Save the Cat, but it's a book about screenwriting, how to write a good movie script, basically. And then based on that, somebody also wrote a book on how to write a good novel. And it's about story structure. It's about how the story has 15 beats, how they're arranged, how they compare to each other, which genres you can have to arrange these beats. It's very, very interesting. I'm actually, like the past few weeks, I'm also watching movies, trying to recognize the beats. So just to train myself a little on how these things work.
Interesting. Do you see their transfer into sort of product storytelling from that type of book?
There's actually a book for that specifically. What's it called again? Story Brand, I think it's called. I'm not sure. But that book tries to take this kind of storytelling stuff and bring it into a business context. That was quite a good book. At the beginning, I was a bit annoyed with how the author thought that he reinvented the world or something. But in the end, I think there was a lot of good nuances to apply this kind of story structures to business.
Very cool. What's the one single thing your company's focused on the most at the moment?
Currently, we're not super into one thing. Probably the one thing we're focusing on most of our efforts on now is building a new custom dashboards module. It's a big thing, so it requires quite some work. The development team is almost completely working on that. Soon we're going to launch it, so there will be some videos and some articles and all that. It's part of creating more features that make that Salesforce as a better choice for mid-sized companies as well.
Cool. If there would be no boundaries in technology, what's the one thing you want to have fixed for your role today?
For my role? No boundaries in technology. It's a very good question. I honestly don't know. I'm happy.
Very good. Very last question would be, right? If today would be the very first day you're working on Salesflare, what's the one advice you would give yourself?
If I would do it all over again, I'll probably start off at the beginning with customer interviews. No, I think first line out the vision and all that, and then do customer interviews, because you sort of need to know yourself, like this is the problem we're solving. And this is the unique way we're going to take it solving it. But then you need to start informing yourself. We took way too long with the customer interview part when we started off, which made that, well, we made some detours. I'd go very systematically about it. It's probably not only customer interviews. I would follow a whole systematic framework, but I wouldn't know which one yet. There's this, what is it again? The Eos Framework, is that?
Haven't heard that one particularly.
Yeah, well, I try to get things lined up before starting, so it doesn't need to happen later along the way. Obviously, you can always adapt stuff, but having a plan is good there. What we learned in business school is how to write the business plan. I don't think that's really essential. I mean, you need to know how you're going to make money and what problem you solve and all that. But a big part of that is also what do you find important? What are your values? What is your mission? What is, these kind of things, which don't necessarily fit into a business plan the classical way.
That makes sense. And I really appreciate that you took the time with us today and shared a little bit about the Salesflare world with us. I want to give you the very last word. If somebody would be forgetting all that we discussed today, what would be the one thing that they should remember about Salesflare?
That if they want a CRM they'll actually use, they should get Salesflare. And if you want to read more about it, you can go to salesflare.com, which is FLARE for the flare. You can also try the software there for starting 7 days, but you get extra days as you do stuff on the trial. It goes somewhere up to 30 days, I think. And if you want to get in touch with me, by the way, you can also contact me on LinkedIn. Just send me a connection request with a personal message. That is a very important part because I get a lot of spam every day. And if you don't add a personal message, I will not be able to distinguish you from all that spam. But if you add one, I will certainly get in touch with you and we can have a chat.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for being a guest on Pathon Presents.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun.